Alrighty, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Wayfarers Christian Church Deep Dive podcast. My name is Nick Griffin. I'm the lead pastor here at Wayfarers. If this is your first time joining us, this podcast is an opportunity for us to dive deeper on topics that we have been discussing in our Sunday services. And here recently, we have been using this time to dive deeper actually into people's stories. I think I've actually enjoyed this series a little bit more even than some of the other topics we were doing. You know, sometimes you're just talking abstract biblical theological concepts. It's a little heady, a little difficult. It's really cool to get to dive deep into people's stories. So we've been calling this series Backstories, and we've been going through backstories of different members here at the church, getting to hear a little bit about their lives, a little bit about how the Lord has affected them. So today I'm joined by our fan favorite co-host here, Ashley Wakefield.
Hello.
And our guest today, whose story you just heard a very short 1 minute version of, is Isaac Redding. What's up, Isaac?
What's up, guys? How's it going? Hey, everybody doing all right tonight? Hope you're enjoying listening to whatever this
tonight,
this is on. Yeah,
today, this morning, whenever you're listening to it, on the car ride.
It is a video, right? That's like a little dangerous.
It's a video and a podcast.
Oh, cool.
So,
Okay.
It goes up on our podcast too.
So if you're driving, definitely be.
Yes, that's an option.
Better be on Spotify.
Yes, do not be watching this if you are driving.
Please be safe.
Please
be safe.
If you didn't know that, if you are watching this and you're driving, just go ahead and shut that video down and pull up your podcast player of choice. Look for the Wayfarers CC podcast, and you can find this here. Let's be safe.
A little PSA. Is that what they call it? A PSA?
And then also, not on camera, but behind the scenes, we've got our teaching pastor, Noah Randolph, on producer duty.
He's somewhere over here.
Way back here somewhere.
Hey, everybody.
You can hear his voice, but you cannot see him if you are watching the
Just
video.
like God.
Man.
It's always weird to, I don't know how far back you want to go, Isaac. Where do you want to start?
Well, I mean,
take it away.
Yeah, starting with kind of what I covered in that short video, kind of expanding on it a little bit more. That conference that I mentioned that I went to, super cool little just like opportunity to just really escape from the just sort of not struggles, but like the
sure, just the distractions of everyday life.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So they like, you go to this thing and they like totally unplug you from everything. Like they don't force you to take your phone away. Like, but they're just like, hey, like, just try not to be on it a whole lot this weekend. And they,
where was the conference?
It was in Oxford, Mississippi.
Okay.
So it's like a, super, it's not too far of a drive from here, but it was just a nice weekend getaway. It's just like on a really beautiful campground. It's really awesome. They gave us some really cool opportunities to just like, to sit and just be silent and listen to the Lord. And through all of that is kind of where he started to convict me. Like the first, I remember one of the first things was like, they like the first evening, you had this like service, and then they said like, we're just asking for a time of silence, and like no one speaks for the rest of that evening. And it's like, and it's like no one does, absolutely nobody, no staff, no campers, nothing. Like everyone is just totally dead silent. So they take you through that, and there's a lot of this this conference is kind of shrouded in mystery a little bit, and like it should be, because it's like it's kind of an experience thing. Right. But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, this is just something that I thought was really cool. So they give you this whole like time of silence, and then while you're in it, they like you're just praying, and they're just like just pray, just like be silent, listen to the Lord, like, and that is so difficult to do whenever it's like put on you, like, hey, be quiet, and like we can tell ourselves all the time that we're going to sit here and listen to the Lord, but like it's so different whenever you're like told to do that, and everyone else around you is expected to do the same thing. It's very interesting. But yeah,
that's cool. No, that I got an opportunity to do something similar. We were in this trip I mention all the time that Adrian and I took to Israel. We were in the desert outside of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And we were spending the night in these like Bedouin tents in the desert, and they were like, for the rest of tonight, nobody talk.
Ooh.
And so it's like
so cool.
It's like pitch black out in the desert. We talked a little bit about Jesus going out into the wilderness.
Yeah.
And You're right, man. It's so weird. It's
It
so
is.
hard to do.
It is. Well, I mean, because I love to like my favorite way to pray, I guess, is just like it's just like thanking God, and it's just like and it's just being like so intentional about like, Lord, thank you for this day. I thank you for this incredible thing you set in front of me. Thank you, Lord, for your rebukes and your like disciplines towards me. But then when I get to the end of that, it's just like, okay, cool, and I'm done.
Yeah.
And so to be told to just be still and just listen was like so life-changing, and I really wish I implemented that more, but like it's just really it was a really cool experience, because I remember sitting in my bed and I was awake for a really long time, because for whatever reason the silence just really unnerved me, and I like couldn't sleep. Like it was like the Lord wouldn't let me sleep until I heard what he had to say. And what he said basically was just man, you got a problem with pride, like, and he revealed that in like a couple succinct like ways. He was like, this is an area you're prideful, this is an area you're prideful, and this is an area that you're prideful in. And I was given another opportunity during the weekend to like almost in like a representative way, just like physically lay something at the foot of the Father, and that was sort of what brought about that change. It wasn't necessarily the act of setting it there, but it was just the sentiment behind it. Like, Lord, this is something that I have. This is something that I know that I have an issue with, that you revealed to me. Lord, take it and replace it with something that I can use to glorify you. And
it is cool how sometimes, we'll make decisions like that, but the ones that really stick are the ones where we can like physically do something to like commemorate that happening. Because, I think God made us as human beings with bodies. We're not just ghosts floating around.
Sure,
So when we use our bodies, when we use the physical world around us to, do those things, I think that's important.
What areas in your life did God reveal to you that you were prideful in?
Yeah.
Well, for one, and the main one wasn't what I mentioned in the video. It was just that like I've been a barista and I love making coffee and stuff, but I've been in the specialty side of coffee, which can often feel a lot like sommelier work, where it's just all very like, these are specific things that I'm tasting in this coffee. These are like things that I find are not subjective, rather objective. And that was why I had an issue, was like realizing that taste was, I was putting down a lot of my like people that I was close with in coffee for having different opinions that I did, when they were just opinions, and I was just kind of being a jerk, because I just like I wasn't recognizing that taste is entirely subjective, and as such they viewed me, and therefore kind of what I stood for, being Christ, as this prideful, arrogant mass, rather than like a personable and loving individual who cares about the opinions of others. And so that's like one specific area.
So was that just related to the opinions about coffee, or just in general?
Well, it was in coffee, and that's like the main thing that I can point to, but it was also just in general throughout my entire life. Like,
because I would say there's probably a lot of other people in the like specialty coffee world that are guilty of that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I've heard other people say that, and I guess I always wonder what the root of that is. Like, what is it about the specialty of coffee that could make somebody become prideful in that
way? Because it's an art form, for one, and it's like, so like I took pride in my art form because I thought it was something that like defined me, and Joseph likes to talk to me about this all the time, is with identity, and I think I was finding my identity more so in my craft rather than in the Father, and pride was just the first area that manifested,
And so there were a couple other areas you said too.
Of course, yeah.
But
and
I want to reemphasize that last line. That's really good.
Yeah.
That, it's really easy to be known and find our identity in the things we do, the things we care about, the things we're passionate about. And when you do place the center of your identity there, you start to become very susceptible to issues of pride.
Well, yeah, susceptible to issues with pride, and susceptible to issues of like, another thing that I struggle with a lot was like insecurity, and was just like just not feeling like I had total control over whatever I was doing.
Right.
And it's funny because like we don't have total control of what we're doing really in that way. Like and to think that we do is that like call me a Calvinist, but one of those one of those like it took me surrendering my identity and putting it in Christ for me to truly be like happy with where I am and
comfortable with the fact that you're not
yeah.
necessarily in control.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like something that I value so greatly, especially coming out of all that, because like I'm still in specialty coffee. I love specialty coffee. It's something that I think is really, really, really valuable, but like for different reasons now, you know, it's less about the coffee. While the coffee is very important to me, it's more so about like the people that I get to witness to, the people that I get to show true servitude to, and like, you know, I don't always do a perfect job with all of that, but I'm certainly closer to doing that now with my identity being in Christ than my identity being in the coffee I was making, you know?
Sure. No, for sure. That was the part of what you said there that really, I really connected with, where you talked about how now you are trying to take an attitude of service more towards what you're doing.
Right. So, well, because that's what Jesus came to do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And like why, you know, I mean, it makes sense that we as people would not gravitate towards that initially because we are inherently sinful, but like, I don't know, it just took that complete surrender of, Lord, this is an issue that you have revealed to me. I want to be more like you, and I want to show people the love that you have shown me and the mercy that you have shown me by not condemning me for this pride that I have displayed. You know, so it's just an overflow and an outpouring of the love the Lord has shown me. And that's what I want to show to others as much as I can.
That's awesome. So how old were you when you went to this conference, when you had this
I think I was like, I had just turned 18. Okay. So it's been almost 3 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a question about the control part. I'm only asking this because I know that I have the same issue, and I know my pastor had pointed it out to me, just, you know, based on a random conversation. And I guess, you know, God showed me in my own personal way, you know, that I can't be in control of everything. So I guess I was wondering how exactly did God show you that you can't be in control of everything?
Well, by me continuously failing. I mean, I would be, not saying that I always succeed now that I trust the Lord, but I was so confused as to why I couldn't do anything right, I guess. And I was like, I would just cry out to the Lord.
I tried hard. I did everything the way it's supposed to be. I did everything right, and it still didn't work out.
Right, yeah. And I'd like complain to my friends, and I'm like, yo, I just feel like I can't do anything right. This is so difficult. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And it's just, and that was, again, I guess stemming from pride. And then, but the Lord showed me, He's like, no, you can't. You can't do this. That's why you have to rely on me. And that just hit me like a truck. I'm like, you're right, Lord. Like obviously you've shown me time and time and again that I can't handle this on my own. How would you have me handle this? You know, and that's kind of where you have an issue with pride came about. Mm-hmm. Like how can I make this better? How can I follow you better? Well, there's this issue that's keeping you from me. There's this issue that's keeping you from me. And then that process of sanctification just like really, really started. And so
did you also have, because I'm also saying this because I think this, apart for me also, this was a part of the whole control thing. Like, do you like have an issue with the whole idea of perfectionism?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I am such a perfectionist to the point, something that like, I feel like some people know about me, but not everybody, is like, I am a very, very like black and white individual. Like there is right and there is wrong. There is no middle ground in my mind. Right. And for me, it's like, if something isn't right, then it is just so wrong. And like, that is just,
everything's terrible. There's no like, just, it's kind of bad. It's
there's no, it's okay. There's like, it's either I did this really well, or I hate myself because it was even just a mark off of being perfect. And it was like, so, and that's really difficult of a mindset to live in, because like, because I also naturally gravitate towards things that I'm good at, So when I'm really bad at something, I just don't even touch that thing. I'm like, nah, I'll touch that with a 6,000 foot pole, thank you. But it's just like, yeah. So that's, I guess, my issue with perfectionism is just like that. It's like, I would love to get these things done, but I'm bad at them. So why? You know, like there's no way I can possibly do these. And like, that has manifested itself in so many ways that I don't need to get into. But like, it's just been. Yeah.
So what's cool about a lot of what you're saying is, obviously, you know, to have had such a big moment where the Lord spoke to you and where you were able to change, listen to what He was saying and really try to like make a change in an area in your life. Especially at 18, I think that's really cool. I always feel like the old guy here. I'm not that old, but
I'm pretty sure I'm older than you.
Yeah,
we're just the youth group.
Yeah,
church,
we're youth
honestly
group church in a lot of ways. But that's a huge thing to be doing at 18. So that's really cool. But I kind of wanted to back up before that a little bit.
Yeah.
And just ask, kind of help set the stage a little bit and stuff like that. Did you grow up in church? Did you grow up going to church?
Yeah.
What was your relationship with the Lord like growing up?
Yeah. So this is going to get fun. So I started, I have been going to church since I was born, basically.
Yeah.
I think I was like 1 when my parents like gave their life to Christ and like went to start going to church and everything.
Mm-hmm. So as long as you can remember.
Pretty much as long as I can remember, I was at a church. I was at one church for a very long time. And yeah, I'm very thankful for that because I don't think I would have the strong foundation that I have right now were it not for my parents kind of moving me towards that. And so as long as I can remember, I've been in church. I've heard every cookie cutter sermon under the sun. I have notes for every single one of them and 14 separate binders. I've got, I've done the church thing, you know, and I've seen the good and the bad that comes with all of it. And it's just kind of, something that I've witnessed. And it's,
did you, always, you've had a lot of experience with it, obviously growing up in it and everything like that. Did you have any point in your life where you, started to, pull away from the church? Or,
oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's happened to me not several times, but like a couple times where I have not where I haven't necessarily stopped believing in God, but that I had just sort of walked away and decided I was just going to try and do life without him, And I made a lot of really dumb decisions. And when I was between the ages of 12 and 16, I was in like a really abusive relationship, and it was just kind of rough. Not physically abusive or anything, but like there was just like this air of like we were both young and there was just abuse going on that neither of us kind of really recognized. But there was just a lot of like I don't know, just mental and verbal stuff that I was like
manipulating emotions.
Yeah, a lot of manipulation. But it was like during that time that I think I was like the furthest from God, and which is coincidentally like also the time when I turned 16, which is when or it was either during that relationship, and that's kind of what sparked the end of it, or it was like right at the end. It was one of those two. Memories are really, really hazy around that time. It's been I've slept since then. But I remember going to yet another conference, and at that conference, just really, really felt called to really dedicate my life to Christ, and I had been baptized. I got baptized whenever I was like 9 or 10. But I've been baptized twice. The second time was at this conference. I was 14. I was 14.
Yeah.
And it was in Destin, Florida. So I got to get baptized in the ocean. Super fun. But it was, I didn't do that because I thought baptism was what saved me. I did that because I like felt called to outwardly take hold of the faith that my parents had started in me. And that's what I did. Because I don't think that I truly followed the Lord, in a personal way until then. Yeah. And then when that happened, I like just ran with it. And I left my home church for like a year and a half. And it was my parents were not a bit worried that I was leaving my church because I was still going to one. But I went to one that was so small that there were like maybe 50 members in it. Yeah. And I can pretty honestly say like there's nothing wrong with that church for me. Just for me, I had I guess learned everything that they had been teaching, I suppose. And so like being in the services and everything, I didn't really hear a whole lot. There were a couple sermons that really stuck out to me, but I didn't hear or I didn't feel like...
It's the tough part when you grow up in church is like, yeah, I've heard this one before.
Yeah, sure,
I've heard this one before,
and that's exactly what it was. I felt like
So was it at the age of 16 when you finally decided to rededicate?
Or 14?
I was 14.
14.
And then I left my home church when I was 16.
Okay, so was that in the middle of this abusive relationship you were having? Yes. So was this with somebody that was the same age as you or older than you?
About the same age.
About the same age. Okay, so the person, I guess, because when I think of abuse, and I could be wrong because I'm not an expert at it, but when I think of somebody abusing someone else, I think of the idea of they know what they're doing, but the other person they're abusing may not be fully aware of what's going on, and they take advantage of that.
I don't really think either of us were aware of it, because I think, so my girlfriend at the time was like, in a lot of situations in her own home that were very abusive. Yeah, well, so I don't really think she was super aware of it. I think it was like it was just like this is how she had been treated in her home, and it was just kind of just something that happened. Yeah, but I never really recognized it as abuse until I started dating again 2 years after we had broken up, and then I was like, oh, this is what a healthy relationship is supposed to feel like. That's weird. I was
when you compared it, you realized.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I really felt like I mean, there was just like a lot of like there was a lot of like body shaming. There was a lot of like I felt very, very inadequate as a man to be in. I mean, I was 16, but
right.
but that kind of thing like really, really cut me to the core. And like I still sort of like struggle with that to some degree now, much less of a degree now. Sure. But like that was like, if you had asked me when I had first broken up with her that like to do a podcast like this,
right?
No way ever, because I'm like, I don't have anything important to say. Like who am I to be on this kind of podcast? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, you had been so beat down by it that
right, that it just over time made me feel very not great.
You got rededicated to the Lord, made your faith your own, not just what you grew up with, because that's always a huge thing for kids who've grown up in the church. Is when is that moment when it's like, I'm not just believing this because my parents told me.
Right.
Did you do you think, you kind of hinted at it, but do you think that is part of what led to ending that relationship, and
yes, it was
realizing that you were being mistreated?
Well, it was that, and it wasn't. I didn't even really end the relationship because I had felt mistreated. I ended it because there was an abundance of sin in the relationship, and the Lord revealed that to me at that conference that I went to. But I never really I didn't act on it for a while.
Right.
But then I acted on it finally, and was just like, look, I just can't. This is too much. This is like a lot of like what we are not supposed to be doing.
Right.
We are not honoring the Lord in this, and yeah.
And so that took a little bit of time, but you kind of came to that realization.
Yeah.
Kind of ended that. You got to go a few years later to another conference where the Lord kind of revealed your pride issues to you and some different things like that. All of which, again, I'll reemphasize, is really cool to be that open to what God has to say to you. And you've even kind of mentioned it a few times, but I've always noticed that you seem to be more willing than a lot of people I've known to receive correction or rebuke from the Lord and different things like that.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, and was that always the case?
It certainly was not always the case. I grew up a very, very rebellious child. There was not like I grew up homeschooled, and my mom, my poor mom, I feel so bad for her sometimes, because I'm just like, man, you had to deal with me. Like that's rough. I don't know. I just was never one to really bend to anything I felt was unjust. Mm-hmm. So like I've always had a very, very strong sense of like what is right and what is wrong. Mm-hmm. Again, with that black and white personality, but like there was never a.
So if someone set a rule that you didn't agree with, you just were going to figure out a way around
I'd question that rule.
Yeah.
I'd talk to them if there was a different rule that would make more sense, and if they disagree with me, I would just not follow that.
Right.
I'd be like, no, you're just wrong.
So can you give us like an example? Because I guess I'm curious about what rule did they give you that you felt was unjust, and what suggestion did you make against it?
Well, okay. I can give a kind of a funny example.
Yeah.
Like whenever I was younger, it was like I shared a room with my brother, who is like 3 years younger than I am. I still share a room with him, but he was growing up arguably much more of a mess than I was, as far as like making messes in the room. My mom asked us to clean the room that we lived together in, and I thought that was ridiculous because he made all the messes and I didn't. Why would I do that? And he'd probably fight me to this day saying that I was the one who was the most messy. But whatever. The likelihood of him listening to this podcast is very low. So I'm just gonna say it.
Right.
He was more messy than I was. But no,
it was the microphone.
Yeah, at the microphone. But no, like, come on, Tristan, fight me.
Yeah.
No, we.
So he would make the messes, and you were both required to clean it up. And you're
yes,
like, no,
but
that's
why
not
would
fair.
I do it? Because he's the one that made all the problems. So that was kind of like where my sense of justice, I guess, like showed itself a lot whenever I was younger. Now, when I got older, it was a lot more yielding. I'm like, okay, that's like, I get it. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I'll yield to your opinion, I guess. You know? And again, that's the pride showing itself again. That was like a mindset that I had, you know, was just like, sure.
I've got it all figured out. I know right and wrong. I know what's up.
Right. And like, I still have that strong sense of right and wrong, but like, if I'm wrong, I'm much more susceptible to
much more open to listening to it and hearing the change.
Yeah. And that is, I cannot attribute that to myself or even my own like age growth. Like that is entirely the Lord. Like I went till I was 18 years old with that entirely super prideful mindset. You can ask Joseph, Joey. You can ask Joey.
Yeah.
Because he saw me through all of that. He like
and Joseph's our worship leader here at the church. For anybody listening who doesn't know who we're talking about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So you can ask him. He is. He had the pleasure of seeing me through all of that, and he even told me when I came back from that conference when I was 18 that like there was a marked difference in it, and I was just like, it's not me, dude. It really wasn't me. Like I can tell you exactly what it was, and it just is nowhere even close to me doing anything right. It is entirely the Lord's will, the Lord's like ability through the Holy Spirit to change my heart and mind, and that's just kind of where it was. It was super cool.
That's cool that he noticed that, and he affirmed it. He's like, I've noticed a change in you before and after.
So your, I guess, strong sense of justice, I guess we can call it that. Did it ever get in the way I guess it makes sense that it would, but I just want to clarify that. Did it get in the way of you compromising and reconciling with other people?
Not necessarily in a weird way. Like if I realized that I was wrong and someone could show me 100% like that I was wrong, then I was usually pretty open to apologizing and just being like, look, I'm sorry that I was wrong. Like, can we fix this? And my problem then shows up when I apologize and someone else does not forgive. Because then I'm like, I do what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
I apologize for what I did wrong. Why are you still mad? Because like, I don't know, but that's.
Yeah. Well, I've talked to a lot of people who, it's sometimes easier to show grace to other people than it is to ourselves.
Right.
And so, sometimes it's easier to just be like, you messed up, but I forgive you. And, get a little upset when they don't return the favor. A little bit like yours.
Yeah.
I guess it just has to do. I guess I look at it as like the level of hurt, depending on how hurt you were. It may take you time to heal. So that's kind of how I was like, if I apologize, why don't you just let it go? But then it's like, I don't know, maybe I hurt you in a way that I don't understand, and you just need to take the time to heal from it,
Right. And that's like, that's not something that I necessarily struggle with a whole lot now, because I understand that and the Bible says like at some point, I forget where it is, but there's like a passage about unforgiveness and how that is like, I've always heard it referenced, but I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's like
well, there's a section in the Sermon on the Mount, if that's what you're talking about, where Jesus talks about if you don't forgive others, you won't be forgiven.
Yeah, basically.
Like the measure you use for other people is what's going to be used against yourself.
So then, like when I realized that, and like that was like a biblical, like a doctrinal truth, that like I was just like, okay, well, I'll apologize, and if they don't, then that's on them.
That's on them.
Or if they don't forgive, then that's on them. I know the Father has forgiven me. My struggle then had been forgiving myself for the problems that I had caused, because I had that strong sense of justice. My heart towards myself like just went like total like opposite end of the spectrum all the time. I was always like, I was out there like, I'm following the Lord and this is good, or I'm the worst person on the planet because I did this one thing wrong, and it's like, that's still how it is to this day, and it's such a difficult thing to deal with.
It swings wildly back and forth.
Wildly, yeah. And it's, I guess the thing that's always helped me through that has been like understanding that the Lord's view of me has always been the same. And there has never been a change in it, and like that he loves me, and that there is not a thing that can take that away from me, and that is just kind of
maybe keeping the way the Lord looks at you at the forefront. We can be a lot harder on ourselves sometimes. So we kind of cut you off. You were explaining a little bit some of your experience. You had grown up in this church, home church that you grew up in, you spent about a year or so at this other smaller church.
Yeah, during that year, I think is super important to highlight because during that year was just like, I was just listening and I was just like looking for direction because I had come out of this relationship feeling very confused as to why, it had to end, I knew why it had to end, but like feeling upset that it had to end, being like kind of just hurt and distraught from all of that. And the only thing that I could turn to was the Lord. And during that year, like I grew and matured more in my understanding of the word than I think I ever had in 1 year. And it was just incredible. So I ended up going back to that church, to my original church, after all that happened, and kind of seeing things a little bit differently and being like, oh, that's a weird thing that they do. That's another weird thing that they do. And that's like, I don't really think I necessarily agree with that. And it was just because I did some more and the word revealed a lot more to me through the scriptures that I guess hadn't been taught to me previously.
So what are, some examples of things you noticed,
Well, just like how discipleship needs to be handled. I went to this youth group for 4 or 5 years at my original church, and people might have known my name, but they did not know who I was, and it's because none of them wanted to know who I was. There was this culture of just like, let's have fun, let's play games, let's have these good times, and I was always like the weird, I guess nerdy kid, as Reagan likes to call me, the one that she avoided in high school. No, I'm just kidding. She did say that, but she's totally joking. Or is she?
Or is she?
No, but I was that weird kid, and I don't necessarily think I was super weird or anything, but I was just weird enough that
felt like an outcast. A little bit.
Yeah, like the people that were in there were these I like watching football and I like playing football, and I'm 6.5 feet tall and I'm 15 years old. I'm like, what in the world is going on? What are they feeding you? And so I'm just I didn't understand the culture there, and nor was I ever introduced to the culture there. It was just you kind of just made your own space. And after I left my girlfriend at the time, I realized all of my friends were attached to her. So when we stopped and when she even stopped going to the church, I didn't have any friends there at all. So I ended up going back and just trying to find friendship in the leadership that I was, I guess, technically a part of at this point, because I came back and they asked me to be a youth leader. And being in the youth, being a youth leader, I thought would put me closer to some people that could really disciple me in my own leadership group and circle of people, and just never there was one person tried to show me some kindness and be
really connect with you, and really
like a mentor to me, and and that really just fell through, which is fine. That kind of thing happens. People get really busy in their lives, and that is just sort of how it is. And I just took on a 40-hour-a-week job randomly out of nowhere and got a girlfriend in the same month. So I'm just I'm so so busy. It's beautiful. I'm thankful for all the opportunities that I have, but I've got no time to do anything anymore.
So you understand a little bit more what they were doing,
now.
But I think your criticisms are still, valid points you were saying about the lack of sort of meaningful connection and meaningful mentorship and discipleship that was going on there.
So did you feel like everybody else had a meaningful connection? They just didn't include you in it?
I felt like there were a lot of meaningful connections in that youth group that are still going strong to this day. But I feel like a lot of people left that group feeling ostracized and feeling kind of a deep sense of hatred of community. And that's where I was. Until I came here. Here is one of the very few places where, and I think I told you this, Nick, but you are the only pastor who ever stopped me after I had done something and gone out of my way to do something for this church, stopped me and intentionally thanked me for what I did. The only person that's ever done that. And that is heartbreaking. It's I appreciate you so much for that. Yeah. But man, that is it.
It's tough that's not. You had helped all kinds of people, and
I was on the worship team for them for 2 years. I led 8th grade small group. I was around so many people who and I counseled people. The amount of times that one of my friends in that group came to me and said like, hey, I'm suicidal, and like this is a really rough thing for me, and like I just need to talk to somebody about it, and I just need, to have someone pray for me. The amount of times that I like the Lord led me to do that for somebody was like ridiculous, and it was, and not once was there a recognition of that. Of course, like some of those issues are a lot more private, so I understand those things, but like there were public things that I did that like were never acknowledged, and
it's funny that's the first time I met you was maybe like the second or third service we ever had here at Wayfarers, and that was the first thing I noticed about you, that I that's kind of why I made it a point to say something about it, because I was super thankful. Like, you didn't know me, you had no relationship with me, you didn't know what we were about, and you still showed up and like played on our worship team, and so I appreciated that desire to be helpful, that desire to serve, that we've been talking about,
right?
And it is a shame, I tend to be very oblivious to lots of things, but I'm glad this was not one of those situations where I was.
And it's like, I don't know. I feel like you could have just not said anything, and I still would have been here. This is what the Lord has called me to be. But it's still just it just breaks my heart that was the culture at that church, and that was sort of where I began, and where the Lord kind of put a passion in my heart to reach those like me who didn't necessarily have that, that group, that core, like 3 or 4 people that they talked to or hung out with on a regular basis. I still barely have that for people, I'm friends with Joey and Reagan and everything and everybody else that's here, but like I don't really hang out with you guys on a regular basis, partially because I'm incredibly busy, but like it's just, it's
tough. But I've noticed that, you have you notice the people who are being
like left out
a little bit,
I try, like I really try. And
so why, I guess, since you were a part of that church and you were familiar with that culture, like how do you think that culture came to be that way, where they just didn't give recognition to people or weren't interested in forming relationships with people that they knew for so long?
That's a really, really hard question because I can say a whole lot. I could really, really answer that in a number of ways, but man, that youth group did not preach the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I can encapsulate the whole thing. They preached a lot of topics. They preached a lot of don't have sex before you're married. They preached a whole lot of alcohol is bad. They preached a whole lot.
I've always heard the phrase is always don't smoke, don't drink, don't chew, and don't go out with girls that do.
Don't go out with girls that do.
That was pretty much it. That was it. And we once or twice a year had this like whole sermon about like sexual purity and how it was like incredibly toxic to listen to in that way, and it like just really induced a whole lot more shame than it did like
actual
growth. And it it was fine. Those things are things that need to be talked about. But if you talk about these things outside of the context of the gospel, then man, you're doing a huge disservice to everybody you're talking to about this kind of thing. And it's like, so I think the reason why there was not an attitude of reaching those who needed to be reached, or recognizing those who needed to be recognized, and appreciating those who were there, was purely because the gospel was not understood, or if it was understood, it was not taught.
So people understood a lot of rules, a lot of what's right and wrong, maybe.
Yep.
But
never that Christ alone.
Right.
There was just so many just weird beliefs that I just do not agree with anymore. My theological differences, I already referenced Calvinism, but my theological ideas, and not ideas, but understandings are vastly different than they were when I was there. I used to, and I still sort of see a lot of this upheld in Scripture still, but like a lot of the Holy Spirit miracles and speaking in tongues, all that kind of thing, those sort of things are totally upheld in Scripture, but in a very specific context. And it is so if they took that context, threw it away, and just ran with it. And I saw a lot of really weird instances of there were prayers that I was involved in which the pastor just started speaking in tongues and said he was going to start speaking in tongues, and it's that's just not how it works. That's not how the Scripture says it's supposed to happen. There's 2 specific ways that it can happen, and that was not one of them. And it was just there was just a lot of,
So I guess because I wanted some more explanation about that, because I know that I'm not familiar with Calvinism.
Yeah.
Because I know that
I'm only so familiar with it. I'm like a very, very recent, like
very recently learning about it and all that.
Yes. Yeah. So I can't really answer a whole lot of questions about it. But I can answer what I think I know, but don't quote me on any of it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, because I at our church, I know there's a lot of speaking in tongues, and nobody ever announces it. It usually comes out during prayer and praise and worship.
Yeah.
And we don't really have conversations, because I don't know if there's a difference in cultures, but we don't really have conversations of, speaking in tongues is only done in this type of context. I guess in our culture, when it happens, it's like it's just a movement of a spirit, and that's it. Like we don't think about it or overthink it or anything. Not to say that we're taught about it, because we don't necessarily have lessons. Not that I've experienced. Somebody else may have done it.
Right. That's definitely how my church was. It was very much just like it's a movement of the spirit, and like just don't question it. But there's like what is it, 1 Corinthians 13 or something that like goes into like really, really specific like Paul is speaking to the church of Corinth, and it's like, this is how it's supposed to be. Is it? Right. Is it Corinthians?
Or it's in 1 Corinthians and also 2 Corinthians. Noah might even know better than me, but Paul spends a lot of time talking about how God is a God of order. He wants things done in an orderly way, and he was upset at the church in Corinth because they were obsessed in a lot of ways with spiritual gifts and who has more spiritual gifts, and we're pursuing after some of those things without doing it in the sort of godly, orderly way.
Yeah. Because I know that we've never had someone like just randomly speak in tongues like while our pastor is preaching. Like that would definitely be disorderly.
Right. Yeah.
But like I said, we've had it happen during prayer, during praise and worship, where like everybody finds it acceptable or nobody's being disturbed with it.
Sure.
So I can't say for sure how our church would handle it, other than just escorting them out maybe and not stopping them from doing it, but just taking them.
Well, there's from what I understand, it's like it is meant to be used as like either you have a designated interpreter, somebody who is totally understood to have the gift of interpretation of tongues, and then someone speaking in tongues, because otherwise you have people just, there was an instance at a church that I just heard this about, but like there was an instance where this dude was just interpreting.
I'm going to try to pull up the verse too. So while we're talking,
please do. Yeah, please do. But there was a, I don't want to say anything that is not biblical, and if I do, I'm deeply sorry. But there was this instance where someone was speaking in tongues, and somebody was interpreting, but the person that was interpreting was just like saying what they wanted to say, and was not actually interpreting the tongues. And they knew that because it was the same message pretty much every week. It was just like, oh, this is happening, and I don't remember what the message was, but it never changed, and it wasn't. Not that like the Lord can't speak the same thing over and over and over, but that like it was very clearly like this dude had an opinion that he was trying to insert into somebody else speaking in tongues. And that's kind of where the disorder sort of comes into place, where I'm like, I don't vibe with that. The instances in which I saw were like, there were 3 people, me, like a pastor, and somebody who we were praying over, that we would pray over this person in the natural and say, the words that we were like intentionally saying in English, and then he was like, all right, I'm gonna start speaking in tongues now, don't freak out. And then started speaking in tongues, and it's like okay, that's like really not how it's supposed to be done. It's like it's either supposed to be in corporate, if it's corporate, which I guess 3 people could be considered corporate. Now it's not a personal prayer, that's you're praying over somebody. There must be an interpreter. I'm not an interpreter, so I don't know what he was doing. And then I go, it's like that, or it's like I always understood it to be also like a personal prayer language.
Yeah.
Like if you're alone and you don't know what to say, the Holy Spirit intercedes in what you're saying and fills that in, And that's like, but that doesn't always have to be in this like wordless groan type thing. It can also, it's just like the Holy Spirit has put something on your heart and puts it on your mind that says the same thing. So because I think when our church does it, I've never really
had somebody like interpret, like somebody speaking in tongues interpret, because I've never personally seen at our church, maybe some people have had other experiences, but when someone usually speaking in tongues, when it happens during prayer, it's never really directed at a person. Like I'm delivering this message to the entire church or a person, and somebody has to interpret it so that everybody understands what the message is. It's usually just like that person may have been in the middle of prayer and they may have had a moment between them and God themselves.
Oh yeah,
if it's corporate.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I think that's totally fine. But
here's the verse you're referencing, so we can kind of give some context. I say this every podcast, but this is we could do a whole episode on
this.
Which we
can we one of these
future.
days? This one's awesome. I would love.
We should look at doing that in the future. So, 1 Corinthians, it's actually 14 is where I was thinking of, but it's all throughout 1 Corinthians. This was a thing that the Corinthian church was dealing with a lot. So he says, "Follow the way of love and eagerly desire the gifts of the Spirit, especially prophecy." So he says, anyone who speaks in a tongue does not speak to people, but to God. Indeed, no one understands them. They utter mysteries by the Spirit. But the one who prophesies speaks to the people for their strengthening, encouraging, and comfort. Anyone who speaks in a tongue edifies themselves, but the one who prophesies edifies the church.
Yeah.
So he says, I would like every one of you to speak in tongues, but I would rather have you prophesy.
Yep.
Because the one who prophesies is greater than the one who speaks in tongues. And this is the part you were getting at. Unless someone interprets so that the church may be edified.
Right.
And so the Paul's desire in that section especially was to get them to understand that the things you do to help the church is the like ultimate good, the ultimate ideal.
Yeah.
He's actually talking about, this is, there's a few verses before this where he talks about, if I speak in tongues of angels but don't have love, then I'm a, resounding gong.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, a big part of his desire was that they would seek after things for the sake of the church,
right?
As kind of the more important thing, the service thing that you've been talking about.
But that's a big part of like, I guess if we're talking about my testimony, that's like a huge like understanding that like that there is an order to this, and that there is like, because I always thought that like if you spoke in tongues you were just good, and that just isn't not the case,
And so you're saying that because I guess my opinion about it, my interpretation of what the verse is saying is a little maybe different from yours, from what I've already understood. So you're saying that every single time someone speaks in tongues, there should be an interpreter. And if there's no interpreter, nobody should be speaking in tongues. I'm talking about like in a corporate sense, like if it is being spoken like loudly over a congregation, that like there needs to be an interpreter, because that's what edifies the church. Okay.
But I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with it. I'm not saying if you speak in tongues in the incorrect way, you're going to hell. I'm saying that that's just
the thing we should be striving towards is what Paul is saying here,
edifying
which
the
is
church.
edifying the church.
Yes.
But yeah, like I said, we'll do a whole other episode on this.
Super interesting. Yeah.
We should definitely talk about it more later on. So we're almost running out of time.
Heard.
It always happens.
Goes by so fast.
I know. I wanted to ask one, I guess a couple of particular questions about where you're at now, because I'm really curious about this. You're still in coffee, so coffee professional, still working at a really awesome shop here in town, roastery and shop, doing all kinds of stuff for them. Hence the 40-hour work week and everything else that you've been talking about.
That's a very recent thing.
And I had the opportunity recently to go hang out with you. You bought me some lunch and fantastic espresso shot.
Did you have mushroom toast? I forgot.
I did.
It
was
mushroom
so
toast.
good.
That sounds good.
It's
It was
just
so
come on
good.
down. It's so good.
Yes.
Is it gluten free?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, that's a very, very gluten filled bakery.
Gluten filled bakery.
Gluten filled, not gluten free.
We actually buy
very
high gluten flour from Sir Lance.
High gluten flour.
Yes. So
oh my
definitely
goodness.
don't. Definitely, if you have an intolerance, don't.
So it was very good. We got a chance to hang out. And a really cool thing I noticed that while I was there hanging out with you is something I had missed from my time working in coffee, which is just that after I left the coffee shop I was working at and went back to grad school, started working at church, came back to plant this church. I'm like in my own little Christian bubble. Like I only have Christian friends for the most part. I come to work here at the church and then go home to my wife and son and my family, and I'm just surrounded by Christians. And what I enjoyed just those few hours we hung out at the shop was we were sitting at this really cool kind of communal table. I love the layout of the space.
Oh, yeah.
And just throughout that time, we just had different people come and like sit down and talk to us. And from what I gather, I don't think any of them were Christians.
Nope.
Any of the people we talked to.
I know exactly who it was. I won't say any names, but we had 1, 2, like 3 people come by.
Right.
One of them was like one of our regulars. One was like one of my employees, and one was was another one of my employees.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was a cool experience just to talk about stuff. Like it was crazy. Like some of the conversations we had, we started talking about cancer and going through things in life, and we started talking about some political things and all kinds of various different things going on. It was really a good conversation that I really enjoyed. And it was interesting to kind of be put back into that headspace where I had to really think about what I was saying. Yeah. Because I care about these people. I want them to come to know the Lord.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to say things in a way that's just purposely going to make them mad.
Sure, yeah.
But I also don't want to like lie about what I believe and things like that.
I mean, I wear scripture on my arm. Like there's not a single person at my workplace that doesn't know that I'm a Christian.
Right.
So what that means is I got to be real careful, and not even had to be really careful, but my representation of the Lord must be good.
Right.
So that these people can come to know him, and it's like, but it's very difficult.
I'm sure, because that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about. Like what is that headspace like going in? The vibe I gathered is just that most people probably that you work with or that you interact with on a regular basis probably aren't.
Almost
believers.
None of them. I have 2 Christian coworkers.
Right. And so you've got that. You're thinking about that. You want to be a good representative of Christ. Mm-hmm. You can't. A lot of these people already have a negative view of the church. Yeah. You don't want to just add on to whatever they may be thinking about stuff.
And there are some really specific ways that I can point towards how I feel like I should do that.
Yeah.
And one of them being I work with a lot of trans non-binary people, and trans/non-binary,
right.
And it's one of the most important ways that I have found to really, really kind of represent Christ well is to respect the things that they ask of us. Is to, if they want their pronouns to be they them, I call them they them. I do not call them what I would
believe,
think because this person technically is a woman, but if they ask that I call them something else, I call them something else very intentionally, because I don't want them to think that the Lord is just somebody who disrespects and hates them. I want them to feel that they are loved, and that even if other people who represent Christ don't love them in that way, that there is someone who will, and there is a community that will,
yeah, that's an issue. I've had that conversation several times in the last few weeks with a few people. It's something I know a lot of Christians are struggling with. How do you respect what people want, but also try to stick for truth. And so I like that. Your heart behind it is so that people feel loved and respected.
Yes.
As sort of an important part of that, and different Christians maybe have come to different perspectives, but that's kind of one of the ways you feel personally.
I mean, because I work around them constantly, and if I don't know, I know that if I were in their position, I would want to feel as though I was loved, and I just don't think that there are many Christians nowadays who look at that type of person with love and kindness. I think there's just a lot of scrutiny put on them, and it is difficult as someone who's representing Christ to kind of shake off that stigma, because the second you see that I have a scripture on my arm is oh, he's a Christian, he hates me, he hates what I stand for, he hates what I am, and I'm but some of my closest coworkers and friends there are non-binary or are
LGBT people,
LGBTQ, all that good jazz. And it's
I guess I ask myself this question because I know that we don't talk a lot about people who profess to be that or identify as that in church? Like, how do you have conversations with people like that if they were to question you about something in the Bible? Because it's like you kind of have to balance out all the wonderful things that God says about loving everyone in general, but then also maintaining God's truth about what he says about certain types of sins and not denying that either. And so I guess I wonder, how do you balance that out? Or has there ever been a moment where you're like, where you didn't really know how to do that, or you failed at doing that?
Well, I don't necessarily think that I am of any stature to proclaim to somebody who is not already in the body how they should be living. Mm-hmm. I'm just as sinful as they are. There's not a single, like, I might be a Christian, I might love the Lord, but every sin that I commit is of equal value to every sin that they commit. Mm-hmm.
True.
So having a mindset of what should I say to this person to help them get better is almost like taking away from the beautiful and like marvelous power that the Lord has. Like what should I say to this person? Like, I should love them, obviously, but then, like, I can't change their hearts. Mm-hmm. I can't change their minds. I can't abolish whatever sin they're working with in their life. Only Christ is able to do that. True. And I'm living proof of that. I was incredibly prideful 2 years ago. Where am I at now? My pride lies in the correct source now. And it's like,
so you've seen the power of letting God be the one that changes people's lives.
Yeah.
And
if they ever ask me a question, that's where I point them.
Yeah.
I would never try and give them answers. I would point towards Scripture. I would point towards the Lord, but never would I be like, yeah, that's wrong because of this.
And I think one of the arguments that I did make is, I think on a panel, it was like an online, not in person, but an online panel we did last year. For a women's group. It was mainly women's, but men were welcome to join it as well. And we got into the conversation about homosexuality. And I guess one of the, I don't know what to call it, but the argument, I guess an argument that I made for not treating homosexuality specifically, because that's what it talks about, is like the end all be all worst sin you could commit, going back to what you were saying about all sin being equal, is that, some people will say that, God calls homosexuality an abomination, which he does, but then he also calls several other sins that we commit an abomination as well. Sure. And so it's like the idea that we've all done something that God can call an abomination, like lying, like feet running swift to trouble, like haughty eyes, arrogance, like all those lifted things that we've all done something, one or another, even if it wasn't homosexuality, it was something else.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. So once again, we need to do a whole nother episode on this issue too, for sure.
I mean, in regards to the question asked, then, like, how do I deal with that? Is just keeping that in mind. Is like I could judge these people all day, every day, but would that not be me going back to my original prideful self and saying, like, I've got this figured out, they're just wrong and I'm right, at the end of the day, I'm just as wrong as they are. Right. And so if I'm on the same field as them, why wouldn't I show them the love of Christ?
Right.
It just kind of seems like there are a lot of people that I've met that have been like, well, I gotta show them that they're wrong. And I'm like, why? Why do you show them that?
Yeah.
You're addicted to cigarettes, and you have this issue, and you beat your wife, and I'm like, I don't understand. This isn't any particular person. I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying this is like this, but it's just like this kind of thing. Like, if you're going to tell me that I should hate these people because of the sin they're committing, I can do the same thing to you.
All right.
And I don't want to do either of those things. Like, it's just.
And I think that it's just easier just to do what you just said, like, let God change them, because it takes a weight off of you for doing something you really don't know how to do.
Now, do I think we shouldn't ever speak to those people? No, absolutely not. I think we should be involved in their lives, and I think that we, like, as Christians, should show them the love of Christ in whatever way that they would receive it, but, and let the Lord do the heavy lifting, because we ultimately just can't. Like he showed me in my pride that, like, I can't. As much as I might try and as much as I might accomplish very little, like, that's about as much as I can do, is that very little. And without understanding the marvelous and incredible, beautiful power that the Lord has over me, then, like, I'm just going to keep banging my head against a wall. And if I truly want people to come to Christ, I wouldn't display myself first. I would display Christ, because that's the ultimate good that you can display.
It reminds me of John the Baptist says in one of the Gospels that there's this famous verse where he's talking about Jesus, and he says, he must become greater, I must become less.
Yeah.
And that seems to be kind of a through line of a lot of what I'm seeing, you know, in your life story. You know, your desire is to puff yourself up through pride, through knowledge, through perfectionism, through whatever it is that has been going on in your life, is to build yourself up. And it sounds like a lot of your story has been God figuring out how to...
Oh no.
That's fine. This was my last point anyways. So a lot of your story has just been figuring out how to become more humble. Yeah. And serve people more and put the spotlight off of yourself and on Jesus.
Right.
So I think exactly that is a great lesson to leave it on here. Yeah. Noah was just telling me our camera died, so if you're just seeing black screen, if you're watching the video here at the end, hopefully, you know, it just emphasized what I was saying, and not, you know, you didn't have to look at us. You just listen to the words and really take those to heart. And I hope you do that. I hope that this is Isaac's story has been encouraging to you. Thank you, Isaac, for sharing with us. I know that these always go so fast, and there's probably a million more things we could say.
Yeah, I could talk for at least 2 more hours. Like I'm just
So here's what I'll tell you. If you're watching this and or listening, you should come hang out with us in person and talk to Isaac in person.
Come on down. Come on down. I'd love to
come and hang out and talk to him and hear a little bit more about what the Lord's been teaching him, and you know, just be a part of what we're doing here. But otherwise, I want to thank you for tuning in, for listening, for watching. Not watching in the car, hopefully, but listening.
Not watching in the car.
Please, I must stress, please be safe. Oh my gosh.
Listening to the podcast and or watching. And I would encourage you, tune in next week as we continue kind of our backstory series. And
who's next?
We're still waiting on Nick to do his.
Come on, Nick.
We are.
Come on, man.
I keep teasing people. You got to tune in and see.
We need to hear more about the skinny jeans and Toms. we need to hear more about it. I need more.
So I don't know. It might be, it might not be. You'll have to tune in and find out.
That's why I first discovered Toms when I
tune in and find out. Might be me, might be somebody else. We'll see.
All right.
I'll see you guys later. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.